Hey, my name's Carl. Tonight I've decided to try and image an object in space known as the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. This object is a massive cloud of ionised glowing red gas located in the constellation of Cepheus, which will be above my head directly in about 2 hours' time. Now, to actually image this object, I've got my imaging rig right here. Part of this rig, I've got my imaging telescope, which is the ASIAIR FRA 400, which has a focal length of 400mm, which gives us a nice field of view on this target. I also have my 50mm guide scope, as well as ZWO guide camera. I have the tracking equatorial mount, the HEQ5 Pro mount, and I also have a Canon 250D attached to the bottom, which will be doing the main imaging, taking the pictures. And to actually control the entire rig, I have an ASIAIR, and I will use this on a tablet to fully control this rig via an app, which is a lovely piece of technology. So I'm now going to go get set up. Wish me luck. Okay then guys, we've got everything now set up. The mount is balanced, it's pointing roughly towards where Polaris is, up there. We've got the power turned on, got a dew heater on, and the only thing we have left now to actually set up is the ASIAIR, which is specifically what I'm going to be showing you how to do on this iPad right here. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first step is to actually go into the ASIAIR. So we're going to enter device, and we get this little menu which pops up, and we can see our imaging equipment has already been connected. And you put in your focal lengths, so you can see for my main telescope with the DSLR it's 400mm, and for the guide camera it will be 50mm, because that is the focal length of my guide scope. So we're now just going to press enter, and my camera will be set to this, so it's not to worry about this. And now we're going to start setting everything up. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to take a test shot just to see if my camera and telescope is currently in focus. So to do that, I'm just going to press this button here. It'll take a 1 second exposure, and then in the bottom we can see it's loading, and this is just the ASIAIR downloading the image to my tablet. So as we can see there, we can see some stars, so we know we're in focus. Okay, so next we're going to use my ASIAIR's Polar Align Aid tool. So to do this, I'm going to go into preview, and then we can say PA. And my telescope and mount is already in this position, which is known as the home position. So all I'm going to do is tap this button to start. So now it knows where it is in the sky. If we press next, it will now rotate 60 degrees. If we come back to the telescope, we can see it's now moving. There we go, and this should take another shot. There we go. So now it knows where it is in the sky, and it can help you polar align perfectly. The closer to which you can get this yellow circle, which is where we're pointing at the moment, to this center point, the more accurate your guiding will be. So at the moment, this is how far off we are from being perfectly polar aligned. It's represented by this yellow crosshair right here. Now to move this yellow crosshair, we can see we need to move it to the left. Therefore, if we come back over to the telescope, the part we need to move is this part right here, left or right, depending on where that yellow crosshair was. So I'm going to have a fiddle with these knobs right here, and we'll see where the yellow crosshair moves to and what we need to do to get this to be perfectly polar aligned. Okay, so I've just fiddled with the knobs. What I can now do is press refresh. It'll take another shot, find out where it is now. And then, as we can see, we've actually gone further away from where we needed to be. So now I know that because I twisted the left knob, if I actually twist it on the right knob, we'll actually become closer to that center point, which is where we want to be. Okay, so after playing with where the telescope is pointing horizontally, I've managed to get inside of that inner circle, but now I need to move it up. To do this, I play with my altitude screws, which are called grub screws. So we have this one here and this one here, and by twisting and turning these, what I can do is I can change the altitude at which this mount is pointing, in turn affecting where the telescope points and helping be perfectly polar aligned. So I'm going to have a play with these and see if I can get that any closer to being centralized in that circle. Okay then guys, so after using those horizontal knobs as well as the vertical grub screws, I've managed to get my total error to this, which if you didn't know is very, very good guiding. And as we can see there, our yellow crosshair is very, very close to that inner circle. So I'm now going to press finish. And my polar aligning is complete. But now, if we were to still actually look at the mount, it is a bit dark. We're still tilted on its side. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the mount button at the top. And then we're going to scroll down, go to home position, start. And now if we were to watch this, it will go straight back to where it started, of which we'll be pointing directly at the North Star Polaris. Okay, so I've just come back to this main screen now, and what I want to do is make sure that my telescope is actually in focus. I know I'm going to be pretty close because I had this working last night and I can already see some of the stars are pretty pinpoint, but we're going to use this Bahtinov mask on the end of the telescope to just make sure that it's nice and focused before we start imaging our target. So in order to find an actual star to use as a reference, if we just let this load, all this is going to give us is a nice star chart. Okay, so this is telling us where we are currently. Here is our night sky, and here is the constellation of Cepheus, and the actual object I'll be going after tonight is located here, the Elephant's Trunk Nebula, but I am going to focus my telescope on a nearby star known as the Neb. So as we can see down here, we can go to it. So if I press go to, my mount will now move. So it now would have moved up there to this star here. So now it will plate solve and it will figure out where in the sky it is currently pointing. And hopefully our blue rectangle will be nice and close to where the red one is. Yep, here it is. So this is where we moved to, and it's now going to correct based on where it just located us. There we go. We're nice and centered on this star. So now, if I were to go back, we can see the Neb is right in the center. Okay then guys, so I have just placed my Bahtinov mask on the end of the telescope, as you can see here, these patterns in the mask create diffraction spikes, and when you take an image through your DSLR, based on where these spikes land, you can actually tell how focused your telescope is. And I've just taken a test shot in our app, and as we can see here, because this middle diffraction spike is perfectly in the center of these two outer ones, I know that this telescope is perfectly focused for tonight's night of imaging. So we're going to roll with this now. So one of the last things which I actually need to get done tonight is the auto guiding. Now what I mean by this is over here we have our guide scope and our guide camera. Now inside of this camera, thanks to the guide scope, it will take multiple exposures, like 2 seconds, and thanks to these exposures, it can tell if the stars inside of these images are drifting. If they are drifting, then the image which comes out in the main DSLR after, say, 10 minutes will look completely wrong, as all the stars will have trailed and will be like lines. So guiding is very, very important. So to get this started, I'm just going to start taking some exposures. There we go. And we can already see some stars, which is quite nice. Now, it is a little bit out of focus, so I'm going to play with how far up this focus is here, and I'll come back to you. Okay, so I have played with the focus of the guide camera, and I'm quite happy with where this is at the minute. So I'm going to press this button here, and it will choose a bunch of stars which it wants to guide with, and it will track all of these, testing where they are and if they are drifting in this image. Before we start guiding properly, it makes sure to do some calibrating, which is what it will be doing up here at the moment. So this will take about 5 minutes, so I'm going to let this do its thing. We'll come back and then we'll move to the target and start imaging for the rest of the night. So while my rig is currently doing the calibration for the auto guiding, I thought I'd just show you where the constellation of Cepheus actually is. So if we look up in the sky at the moment, we should be able to see that you've got these stars here, which form a form of pentagon, and the actual object which we'll be imaging today sits on this very faint star right here. Okay, so the software has finished calibrating, and as we can see at the bottom, we can see that the mount is making corrections to where this is currently pointing in real time, based on how much drift these stars have. Okay, so now I'm going to change where we're currently pointing to the main target for tonight. So there's the constellation of Cepheus. If we zoom in, come down here, we can see the Elephant's Trunk Nebula. Now I'm going to have a slight play with the rotation of where my camera is pointed, because I did take some shots last night and it would be nice to add the data from tonight to the data I got last night by having the field of view be the same. So I'm going to play with this, get the rotation to be where I want it to be, and we'll see in a minute. Okay, so I've just flipped the camera by about 90 degrees. If I now come back to the app, what I can now press is frame, and if I now refresh, as you can see, it's just shooting at the moment. It'll get an image, it'll see where the stars are inside of the image, and then triangulate where it's sitting. So there we go, so we can see now I'm a lot closer. I just need to bring my camera to the right a little bit, which I do now. Alright then guys, so after a little bit of trial and error of twisting that camera left and right, as we can see, the blue and red rectangle are now perfectly in sync, which means that my camera is currently pointed in the exact field of view shown in this app. Okay, so now that everything has been set up, what I'm going to do is something called auto run. And basically what this is, if I click on the 3-line dot here, you have a bit of a plan for the whole night. So my plan for tonight is 10-minute exposures with the DSLR set to ISO 1600. We're going to take 30 shots, and I'm not going to bother with a meridian flip. And when we finish imaging, my entire setup will go back to the home position, so it's pointing towards Polaris, and the ASIAIR will shut down so that we can save some power. So if I come back, literally all I need to do now is just press play, confirm, and our first 10-minute shot has just started. Now this is where the magic happens. This is where we get all of our data for the night. Okay then guys, so this is our very first test shot of a 10-minute exposure. And to be quite honest, I am very pleased with the result. As we can see here, this is why they call it the elephant's trunk.